If you're watching this video, there's a good likelihood that you want to get into one of the top consulting companies. Well, in today's video, I once again have Sid Sharma, who is an IIT Kanpur and IIM Bangalore grad, and he has also worked at McKinsey for 5 years. In last week's video, we were discussing about what are the pros and cons of a consulting life. And actually, we also ended up sharing a lot of the parts of consulting which we don't get to hear about in campuses. So go and check that video out. It's going to be linked here. But in today's video, we are going to be talking about what these top consulting companies like McKinsey, BCG, Bain, they look for in you when making a hiring decision. So let's get started. Hey Sid, welcome back.
Hey, Tom.
So today's video, what I wanted to cover was sort of get your perspective on what are the MBBs really looking for when they're hiring from MBA schools or even from undergrads. Do you want to start by giving a little bit of an overview of what the process looks like and what are the different steps?
Yeah, sure. So I think the answer would slightly differ by whether this is for undergrad students or B school students. So the whole thing really starts off in most cases with pre-placement talks on campus. Following that, or maybe sometimes preceding that, there may be a shortlisting process where they seek resumes from interested candidates and then they evaluate them on their multiple criteria. And we should talk about those criteria and then identify a short list of candidates. Typically, all firms have two discussions. The first one can be like a case workshop where they show you the whole process of a case interview. And the second one is just prior, like 1 to 2 weeks or sometimes more. Prior to that, they have this one final interaction where you really are given the opportunity to know the people at the firm, which basically means like they do it over dinner. Senior folks like partners or senior partners, associate partners or managers, they all come down to campus. You get a chance to speak to them, to understand them more, to understand the kind of work those companies do, and try to see whether you really are fit there or not. So that's like the process. And then finally, on the placement day itself, you have the interviews, which are case interviews. During this, in parallel, you are typically assigned a buddy, which is really an informal mechanism to provide you mentorship to navigate the placement process and prepare for case interviews.
No, that's very helpful to set context. Now, my next question was sort of which are the ones which are actually evaluative? Because obviously the interviews are going to be evaluative, but is the company also sort of evaluating you on the other interacting points that you have?
So think of this whole process as a as a funnel. Like you start off with like 200 or odd candidates or maybe more who are interested. Once the resumes are evaluated, they identify a shortlist which is much smaller, typically less than 50. Now, ideal scenario is that you are able to interview all the 50, but that is not how it works, because it depends on the kind of process that the particular college is following. How do firms ensure that they get their best candidates first so that they are able to make an offer to them before their competitors do?
Yeah.
And that is where this whole evaluative discussions before the interview come in. And that evaluation is to gauge interest, but also to gauge capability. So your buddies may administer you cases and they would be like, oh, this guy is not really doing well. That buddy actually does pass on that information in many cases to the person who's leading the campus placement process. And then when that person is asked, okay, what are the first 12, who are the first 12 candidates you want to see on day 0 or day 1? Then you are not the highest priority candidate there.
Yeah. And I think a lot of students also don't realize that the recruiter, if you are good, then the company is also like waiting to pounce on you and grab you from the competitors. So it's a give and take, and they also want to understand what your interests are. If they give you an offer, will you really accept it, or will you just reject it and go to someone else? So what do you think are, and if there are, some do's and don'ts during the pre-placement talk?
I would say the do is just show up. Like just show up, try to understand what this job is about. Can try to impress people on the first day, but doesn't really help as much. I haven't seen a very high correlation between people who come across as very interactive during the PPTs and then their ultimate success.
Yeah.
I actually never ever did I ever ask a question in a placement talk.
Yeah, a lot of people have this misconception. And probably it's also a very high risk, high reward strategy. If you do well, then of course you will grab a lot of eyeballs. But if not, then it can go really bad for you as well.
But I don't think it matters as much. Like instead of being insecure during a placement talk about what smart question you can ask and impress people, why don't you just pay some attention and understand what this job really is about?
Time to sort of move on to the most important thing I think everyone might be watching this video for. So shortlisting process ke time, what are some of the things that the MBBs are looking for?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I can speak to that both as a candidate at some point with all MBB firms, but also as someone who was part of the recruiting process for undergrad campuses and these schools. So typically, like what I've seen is that they are looking for people who have demonstrated distinctiveness in at least one of the four domains: your academics, your positions of responsibility, your work experience, and your extracurriculars. Like if you can actually still get shortlisted with just one domain of excellence, but two will definitely get you through.
So, is there any difference between, say, shortlisting or even the interviews between the internship process and the final placement process? You might be able to answer that because, I mean, from ISB, there was just one process. So, we sort of had an idea or at least a conception or misconception that it's much more difficult and the cases are harder than the internship cases. Is that the case?
I agree with that. And it's a very simple reason. In case of internship, you get 2 more months to evaluate a candidate and see if that person is a good fit in the company.
And what about GPA? Because is it like the most important area where they look for a spike, or if someone has lower GPA, they still can compensate for it in other areas?
No, absolutely. So as I said, GPA is important, but not as important. So you may have a less than average GPA, but if you went ahead and worked for Schlumberger, and you were the president of the student gymkhana, and you have something on you have some extracurricular interest, maybe you're a good sports person.
Yeah.
There is no reason I would not shortlist you.
Yeah, that reminds me of this one guy in our batch who got shortlisted with a really bad GPA because he had 2 patents in his name, which was like a really key differentiating point, right? Usually no one has patents in their names at our age.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like you have to be master of a few trades and not like jack of all trades.
Okay, so let's talk about the next one, which is case prep with buddy. So what is the right time for people to really start preparing for cases?
Don't do buddy cases unless you think you will do well at it. Like if you're looking for practice, please go ahead and practice with other batchmates who are not part of your case prep group. Completely. I think it's very difficult to know whether you are solving cases well or not. The only way to know it is by doing it with many people. So if you're an engineering grad, don't do too many cases with engineers. Do it with like people from Delhi University or like a CA or like a lawyer.
So basically be decently prepared even before the buddy interviews.
Yes.
After the buddy prep, of course, there's the final day of interviews. How to make most use of that, and also a little bit about what are the preps that should be done before the main day, because one is of course the case interviews, which we always do, but are there other things that they should also prepare for?
One of the things that people overlook while they're doing this mad rush about cracking case interviews is that they just do not reflect enough on why they want to join that company and why that company should hire them. So this is like always bucketed under HR questions and kind of looked down upon in a way that this is something that you need to do. It's like eating a frog. At some point, you need to do it. If during the interview, if the person asks you like, "Oh, I haven't had time to look at your profile. Can you introduce yourself a bit?" You've got 30, 60 seconds to impress that person. You're here to make a marketing pitch. Now you can blabber about like the fact that you're from Meerut and then you grew up like you went to a convent school and your father is a professor, but like that's not convincing reasons for an MBB firm to hire you. Why would you like talk about that? So very important to reflect why you want to do this, why they should hire you, and any opportunity that you get during the interview to make a pitch, make the pitch.
What does the final day really look like? In the sense, of course, it's very case to case dependent on how many interviews you're going to have. But on an average, is there a number that these firms come, in mind with?
Depending on how many panels they have, how long is the shortlist, and how many offers they want to make, they would decide what's the right number of interviews to have. Now, very clear, like very specifically, during the summers process at B schools, you have to do minimum 2 interviews. If you get a yes in both, you get the offer.
Okay.
Else, there would be a third interview. If you get a no in the third interview, then you don't get an offer. You move on to the next one.
I think we should talk about like a summary of the overall skill sets that they are looking for through the entire process, actually.
No, for sure. So that's a good question. The kind of skill sets they're looking are the skill sets that would make you successful at the job.
Yeah.
Now, there are 3 key parts, like the way I see. One is problem solving. It's like prioritization, structuring new problems, doing analysis, synthesis, right? It's a whole end-to-end process of solving new problems in a short time frame under pressure. The way they assess problem solving is through proxies on your profile plus your performance in a case interview. Second one is about meaningful, deep client relationships. You need to have a good working rapport with the clients during the course of your engagement. Ways of finding evidence for your ability to do that is to specifically look for distinctiveness on work experience, positions of responsibility, or extracurricular activity. And the third one is more about just the whole process management, orchestration, diligence, hard work, like having that work ethic, which will get you through consulting, which is a taxing profession. The fact that we're looking for distinctiveness in more than one areas is testament that we are looking for the people with right work ethic, because to be distinctive in more than one or more than 2 areas, you need to really work hard. In summary, the last 2 things they really get from your profile. During the internship process, they can find further evidence for 2 and 3, because that is something which is difficult to judge in a 1-hour conversation.
Yeah.
So that is why I am a big fan of making offers to only interns and like having an internship process instead of just having a finals placement process. Nothing against ISB, but I understand it's a different campus. But if given a choice, if everyone had an internship program, I would prioritize that.
And I think that's fair because, when coming from ISB, when I joined my firm, what I noticed was the people who were coming from IIMs, they already had a lot of built-in or established relationships. So it was because obviously they had done their internships in that company. So those relationships sort of really helped them to get staffed on good projects faster than someone like us who really had to struggle to, again, from scratch, build those relationships.
The advantage of being in a 1-year course is like you save 1 year. Like, yeah, so the price you pay is like being a bit like outsider or stranger.
I think one of the other prices actually ISBNs do pay is being hired at the entry level, despite of some of them even having 4 or 5 years of experience.
For sure.
So because consulting,
yeah, that's an altogether different discussion.
Yeah,
of the pros and cons. Yeah.
And I think towards the end, I just want to address something which is probably more relevant to the IIMs. Any major do's and don'ts during the internship process so that it can get you a PPO?
The internship process is to find evidence to not give that person an offer. If you create opportunity for them to like be convinced that they should not make you an offer, then they will not make you an offer.
I think it really reduces their cost of hiring. So they might as well use the batch of interns to give them final offers as well.
For sure. Just one thing I think we didn't cover today, but we should speak to it, which is like all of this was about the on-campus placement process.
True.
However, now a lot of off-campus hires are being picked up by all consulting firms, especially in undergrad. The reason being the demand supply, as I said. There's a big cost to going to different campuses, having 8 panels, when at the end you know that you will not be making as many offers. Now, how that works in like quick summary is that you need to apply to these firms through their websites. Then the same thing happens. So there will be a shortlisting process. You would be assigned a buddy. Then you have interviews. The first few interviews would be screening interviews, most likely. And then those folks will have interviews with partners and senior partners who would have the ability to like make an offer.
Does it happen during a specific period of time, or is it spread out throughout the year and you can apply anytime?
It depends. It depends on the campus. It depends on the company also. Some companies do have like 2 or 3 batches. In some consulting firms, it's more of an ongoing thing where you keep applying. You just apply whenever you think you're ready and just go through that process.
So thank you so much for sharing all your valuable insights from the other side.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great chatting with you.
Same here. A very quick summary to end the video. Number one, the consulting companies, when shortlisting your profile, are looking for spikes in your resume. It could mean a really good CGPA, but if you don't have that, it could mean having a spike in any of the other areas of your profile. Secondly, do note that once you are shortlisted, the further processes like a buddy program or the case workshops, they are all mostly evaluated. So you cannot let your guards down during that process. Thirdly, through the entire recruitment process, these top consulting companies are looking for a few things in you. One is how good are your problem solving skills? Secondly, are you presentable? Can you talk to clients? Thirdly, how good are your work ethics? So that's about it. If you found this video useful, give this a like, hit the subscribe button, also the bell notification button, and share it with your friends who might also be wanting to get into consulting. And I'm going to see you in the next video. Till then, bye.